So we can see that conclusions, and we've all probably, we can probably think in our own lives of the experiences that we've had about people concluding things about us too quickly, or thinking about how we've concluded, somebody who wanted to share something with concluded, and they ended the conversation, the doors were shut to their mind before you even had an opportunity to really expand it out. And so we can see that there's a threat in conclusions, but they are, interestingly enough, a necessity of thought. They're a necessity of cerebration in that we need to have conclusions in order to decide to do something. If I want to do something that's noble or ignoble, if I'm going to do something that's noble or ignoble, I still need to decide to do it. I can't decide to do the good thing without concluding that it was good. And so I have to end my thought on that idea for a moment in order to move on to action. And that is the next thing. Without conclusions, there can be no actions. We cannot go to the next step. There is no acting on it. I can decide that I may want to go out to dinner tonight and take my daughter, who's here with us today, and I might want to take her out to go eat. And if I can decide that in my mind, but I don't ever put that idea to bed and I just kind of waver back and forth, we'll never end up going anywhere. And so even though they are a threat, they're also a necessity. And the last thing is, if we want to be able, I'm going to use my little whiteboard marker here. If we want to be able to build larger ideas, more diverse ideas, we have to build upon our previous conclusions. See, we can never get off the first floor unless we build off of our previous ideas. So in syllogisms, we have let's say we have two premises. All right, I always explain this as like building a little house here. And we have on that, we have our little roof, okay? So this is two premises, and we have the conclusion on top. Two premises, and then the conclusion on top. And then we might have two other premises over here and a conclusion there. To reach higher levels of thought, you have to, these conclusions then become the premises of your next thought until we build up higher and higher and higher. So a really simple, easy way to describe that is all humans need food energy. There was one. Paul is a human. Conclusion, Paul needs food energy. All right, pretty simple. We're like that one, okay? So we have our two premises and we have our conclusion. All fruits have food energy. Bananas are fruit. Therefore, bananas have food energy. So we have our two premises of conclusion over here. All right, Paul's hungry. It's lunchtime. So Paul needs food energy. All bananas are fruit that have food energy. Therefore, Paul can eat a banana and get food energy. These are the basic building blocks that depend on conclusions. If we can never conclude anything, then we can never get off the first floor. So since they are both a threat and a necessity of thought, and in this case, we're talking about cerebration, since they are a necessity, thousands of years ago, there was an old Chinese farmer, and he lived outside of a small village in China, and he had one son, and he had one horse. I get nods from the audience, so I'm glad somebody already knows this story. One day, the farmer was at the house, and the horse was in the stable, and the horse kicked down the door or the fence and ran off. And the farmer, being notified of it, was a little sad. And the townfolk came out, and as they came out to the farmer's house, they said, "Oh, we're so sorry to hear about your bad fortune. We were just, they were wailing and moaning, and they're so sad for him." And the farmer, like I said, he was a little sad too. He's like, "Yeah, that really, that's sad. I won't be able to take my goods to market." But then he sat back and he stroked his long gray beard, and the wise old man thought to himself, but how can I really tell if this is a good thing or a bad thing? A few days later, that stallion returned with 3 mares in his train. Now all of a sudden he's gone from nothing, now he's the richest man around the town. All right? And the townfolk come in again, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, what good fate has befallen you. This is fantastic. I mean, this is incredible. You are now the richest man in town." Honestly, the wise old man, he did feel pretty good about the now 4 horses in his stables. And he thought to himself, though, as he reflected, he goes, but how can I really tell if this is a good thing or a bad thing? A few days later, the boy, his son, his only son, was out in the stables with the horses, and that cantankerous male horse, whack, breaks his leg, maims him. The only son, this is the person who's supposed to help around the farm, now he's lame. And the townfolk hear about this and they rush out there and they say, "Oh, what a horrible fate has befallen you. We're so sorry to hear about your bad luck." And the wise old man, again, his child's in pain, he feels horrible, but again he sits back and he strokes his long gray beard and he wonders to himself, but how can I tell if this is really a good thing or a bad thing? And the next week after that, the army comes to town, and the army comes to conscript all the young men of able body, and all the town folks' sons are taken off to war where they will all die in battle. And the town folk run out to the old man and they say, "How fortunate you are, you were able to keep your son, where all of ours have gone to war." And the old man did feel good about having his son home, but yet he stroked his long gray beard and thought to himself, "But how can I really tell if this is a good thing or a bad thing?" And that story illustrates the first point of good guidelines of conclusion. Just to slow down. As we slow down our concluding process, as we wait for more information, we give time for it to develop, for we can see the rest of the picture that's around it. We feel driven to conclude. We feel driven to come to a conclusion because our biology drives us to it. If not, we'd just be loafing around all day not doing anything. But biology knew we have to make decisions, we have to keep moving forward if we're going to survive. And so if you decide not to, and you decide to live in that tension of waiting for that conclusion, deciding whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, waiting a little bit longer, you get that anxiety inside and it starts building up. And so it does take a bit of frontal thinking to say, all right, I'm going to feel that challenge, I'm going to feel those emotions, and I'm going to wait a little bit longer. I'm not going to draw my conclusion yet, giving it time to work itself out. And we do need time to process all the alternatives, to see, to walk around it. And really, it also gives us time to talk with other people. And that's the second point of conclusions, so guidelines for that are helpful for drawing healthy, good conclusions. And we talked about earlier about how you believe in interpersonal neural networks. You believe I can put my ideas in your head, and you believe also that you can put your ideas in my head. I know because you'll talk to me, I'm sure. So with that, we recognize that by doing so, we can do something that we see in the cells and the neurons all around us, in all the animals, is that you have a bunch of individual units. Okay, you have a bunch of individual units, and in each individual unit, there's a certain amount of ability to comprehend, to think, to cerebrate, all right? And with that, we have a limit, all right? Let's say it's 10. But through language, we can actually transfer our problems, our ideas, our thoughts into another person's mind. And in so doing, we are then able to incorporate what I call a collective consciousness, which is not the same as groupthink. Right, where people are just looking to, just seek social harmony. They're not, and it's not the herding instinct where we just like, fire, and we all run for the door. But this is recreating the argument that's in the mind, that tension that we feel. We can actually enter another person in that tension, and allow that argument that occurs in the mind as we are trying to decide something. We can bring that outside of ourselves. While it's inside of ourselves, we can engage it outside of ourselves. And there's definitely a whole lecture I could give on how does that look, what type of people should be invited to that party, what people should be connected to, which ones should be avoided. But that's not the specific context of our conversation today. The last thing is that that once we've concluded, we've talked to the group, we've come to our conclusion, we want to leave the door cracked. We want it to be elliptical. When we conclude something, we have an idea. All right, we think about it, we conclude. This needs to cycle back around, and we need to rediscover our own conclusions, to interrogate them again at a later date. And in doing so, we leave the door open for new information to be added. The conclusions, we conclude for a time, we understand we have to do that. It is a necessity to move forward with action, to make that decision to go in this direction or that. but at the same time it leaves it open. That we in our mind ahead of time, as we were closing the door on that, we made sure and left that door stop in there, so there's just enough room that when we come back around 3 months from now, 6 months from now, we can go revisit that thing again. And the last thing I want, and in my closing, I want to share one other thing, because I've seen so many people get to that end, and they're standing there. They know that conclusion is tough, but for some reason they think that that it's going to be wishy-washy. It's not. It's called maturity, and you have permission to change your mind.